The VA Community Support Center was not a place for grand gestures or heroic parades. It was a quiet, unassuming building nestled on the outskirts of town, a haven for broken souls and silent battles, a place where veterans young and old came to piece together lives shattered by distant wars. Thomas Hayes had come as a volunteer, a quiet way to fill his Tuesdays after his physical therapy, a routine he had come to cherish. But the silent scream of that young soldier on the verge of suicide made him relive his own past and changed everything. This is the story of how a man who had survived the inferno found his true purpose in saving a soul from the cold darkness. Room 3B smelled faintly of stale coffee and unspoken burdens. The support group was small today. Only 6 veterans gathered around a large oak table, their faces a tapestry of unspoken pain and guarded hope. There was old Frank, a Korean War vet whose hands trembled incessantly, young Maria, a former medic from Afghanistan, haunted by the faces she couldn't save. And then there was Private Alex Miller, barely 20 years old, his eyes hollow, his posture slumped, his spirit seemingly extinguished. Alex was the youngest here, too young to carry such weight, too young to have seen what had left him so utterly broken. Thomas Hayes sat opposite Alex, observing quietly. He had seen that look before countless times in the jungles of Vietnam, in the eyes of men who had witnessed unspeakable horrors, who had lost pieces of themselves in the chaos of combat. It was the look of a soul teetering on the edge, a silent plea for help that few could hear or understand. Thomas had been there himself decades ago in a different kind of darkness, a darkness that still clung to the edges of his own memory. The group leader, Dr. Evans, a kind woman with gentle eyes and a soft voice, tried to guide the discussion. She spoke of coping mechanisms, of self-care, of finding new purpose. But her words seemed to bounce off Alex's empty gaze like pebbles hitting a steel wall. He barely registered her presence, barely acknowledged the concerned glances from the other veterans. He was 1,000 miles away, lost in his own private hell. Alex had recently returned from a brutal deployment in a remote part of the Middle East, a mission that had gone terribly wrong. He had been a scout, a young man full of promise and idealism, but a sudden ambush, a flash of gunfire, a scream in the darkness, and everything had changed. He had made a split-second decision, a choice that saved some, but cost others a choice, that now gnawed at his soul like a relentless predator. He blamed himself for everything, for the fallen, for the living, for the choices he had to make. The guilt was a physical weight, crushing him, slowly suffocating him. Thomas watched him, the slumped shoulders, the clenched jaw, the subtle tremor in his hands, all familiar signs of a man consumed by an unseen enemy, a war fought within the confines of his own mind. Alex hadn't spoken a word since he joined the group 2 weeks ago. His silence was a scream, a desperate plea that resonated deeply within Thomas's own scarred memory. During a short break, Dr. Evans approached Thomas, her face etched with concern. "Mr. Hayes," she whispered, "Alex is not doing well. He's withdrawn, unresponsive. We've tried everything, but he's slipping away. I'm worried he might do something drastic." Her eyes pleaded for understanding, for guidance, from a man she intuitively sensed, understood the silent language of trauma far better than her textbooks could teach her. Thomas nodded, his gaze fixed on Alex, who sat alone in a corner, staring blankly at the wall. "I know, Doctor, I've seen it before." His voice was a low rumble, carrying the weight of a shared history. Dr. Evans saw the flicker of something profound in his eyes, a depth of understanding that transcended words. "Dr. Evans, can you talk to him? He seems to respond to your presence. He watches you sometimes." Thomas hesitated. His own past flooded his mind, the desperate darkness, the gnawing guilt, the silent screams that almost pushed him over the edge. He remembered the faces of his fallen brothers, the choices he had to make, the burden of survival. But he also remembered the quiet strength that pulled him back, the subtle nudges, the unspoken understanding that had allowed him to find a way forward. He knew what Alex was going through. He understood the suffocating weight of a soul consumed by its own demons. "Tommy, I'll try, doctor, but it might not be what you expect." His voice was calm, resolute. He walked slowly towards Alex, his movements deliberate every step, carrying the weight of purpose. Alex didn't react as Thomas approached. He continued staring at the wall, his eyes empty, his world seemingly devoid of color or sound. Thomas sat down on the chair next to him in comfortable silence, not speaking, not demanding, not judging. He simply sat there, a steady, unwavering presence, a silent anchor in Alex's swirling chaos. Minutes ticked by. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken pain and shared understanding. Thomas didn't rush it. He knew that some wounds needed time, some screams needed quiet, listening, not loud words. He simply breathed his presence, a calm rhythm beside the young man. Then Thomas slowly extended his right forearm, placing his hand gently on his knee. The sleeve of his faded plaid shirt was slightly rolled up, revealing it, the faint, deep, jagged scar. A physical remnant of a story few would ever hear, a map of battles fought not just with bullets, but with wits, with sheer will, with an unwavering loyalty to survival. Alex's gaze remained fixed on the wall for another moment. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, his eyes shifted. They landed on Thomas's arm on the scar. His empty gaze suddenly sharpened a flicker of recognition, a spark of something profound igniting in their depths. He didn't flinch, didn't recoil. He simply stared at the scar as if it held the key to a truth he desperately sought. Thomas said nothing. His hand remained still, the scar, a silent testament, a living history. Alex's eyes traced the jagged lines of the scar, a silent dialogue passing between the two men, a language understood only by those who had walked through the same hell, who had carried the same unspoken burdens. The scar spoke of mud blood, fire of comrades, lost of impossible choices, made of the unyielding will to survive. Then Alex slowly, very slowly, lifted his own arm, his left sleeve slightly rolled up, revealing it, a similar scar on his forearm, though smaller, fresher. It was the mark of a recent shrapnel wound, a physical reminder of the ambush that had shattered his world. He looked at Thomas, his eyes no longer empty, but filled with a mix of raw pain, desperate hope, and a dawning understanding, a silent plea for connection. "Lex," voice barely a whisper, raw with emotion. "You too, you've seen it." His voice cracked with the weight of unspoken trauma, the years of silence and the sudden unexpected recognition. Thomas nodded, his gaze steady. "Yeah, son, I've seen it. We've all seen it." His voice was soft, calm, filled with an empathy born of shared experience. "Alex," tears slowly welling in his eyes. "It was my fault. They died because of me. I chose to save myself." His voice was choked with guilt, the words a torrent of unspoken pain that had been consuming him. Thomas reached out his hand, placing it gently on Alex's shoulder, a steadying, reassuring presence. His voice remained calm, unwavering. "No, son, not your fault. You made a choice, a soldier's choice. You survived. And sometimes surviving is the hardest part, but it's not a burden to carry alone." Alex looked at him, his eyes searching Thomas's face for understanding, for absolution. He saw no judgment, only a profound empathy, only the quiet wisdom of a man who had walked through the same fire and emerged on the other side. "Alex, how do you live with it? The faces, the screams, the choices?" His voice was barely audible, his body trembling with the intensity of his raw emotion. Thomas removed his hand from Alex's shoulder and slowly unbuttoned the cuff of his own shirt, revealing a faint faded tattoo on his bicep beneath the scar. It was an old military unit insignia, weathered and almost indistinguishable, but it was there, a subtle symbol of a past. He carried Tommy. You don't forget, son. You carry it. You honor it, but you don't let it consume you. You find a new purpose, a new mission. The ones we lost, they wouldn't want us to drown in the darkness. They'd want us to live, to fight for a new dawn. Alex stared at the tattoo, then back at Thomas's eyes. He saw not just a veteran, but a mentor, a guide, a beacon of hope in his own personal darkness. The words, the quiet wisdom, the shared understanding. It was a lifeline, a path back from the brink of despair. Alex, but I don't know how I can't see the path. His voice was raw with desperation. Thomas looked at him, his gaze holding the weight of countless battles and countless lessons learned. The path is always there, son. Sometimes you just need someone to help you see it. It's not about forgetting. It's about learning how to carry the weight, how to find the light in the shadows, how to keep fighting when the war is inside you. Alex's tears flowed freely now, a release of the pent-up anguish that had been consuming him. Thomas sat beside him in comfortable silence, his hand gently patting Alex's back, a silent, comforting presence. The words were few, but the understanding was profound, the connection forged in shared trauma and shared survival. The silence in the room was not empty, but filled with the quiet strength of healing, the faint echo of a battle won. Dr. Evans, who had been observing from a distance, watched the scene with tears in her own eyes. She had witnessed countless sessions, countless attempts to reach Alex. But only Thomas Hayes, only an old man who carried his own ghosts, had been able to cut through the darkness and offer a path back from the brink. She understood that some wounds could only be healed by those who had bled the same blood, who had walked the same path, who carried the same quiet marks of survival. The support group resumed its session, a different kind of energy now permeating the room. Alex slowly began to speak, for the first time, his voice raw but filled with a newfound purpose. He spoke of his fears, his guilt, his loss. Thomas sat beside him, a silent anchor offering a nod of understanding, a quiet presence that validated Alex's pain and offered him the strength to face it. The other veterans listened with a profound respect, recognizing the silent healing that was taking place, a testament to the power of shared experience. In the days that followed, Alex's transformation was remarkable. He slowly began to re-engage with the world. His eyes regained their light, his posture straightened, his voice grew stronger. He still carried his scars, his memories, but he was learning how to carry them with purpose, how to find a new mission in life. He began volunteering at the VA Center, helping other young veterans, sharing his story, sharing his newfound hope. Thomas Hayes continued his quiet routine at the VA Community Support Center. He never sought recognition, never asked for thanks. He was content with his role as a silent observer, a quiet guide, a beacon of hope for those who had lost their way. He found a profound purpose in helping others carry their burdens, knowing that his own battles, his own ghosts, had found meaning in saving a soul from the darkness. His Tuesdays were still reserved for his physical therapy and his trip to Fresh Choice Market. He still pushed his cart down the cereal aisle, his gaze distant, his movements deliberate. No one at the market knew of his silent heroism. No one at his quiet home knew of the profound impact he had on the lives of young veterans. He was content with his anonymity, with the peace he had earned. But sometimes when he felt the old ache in his back, when the stiffness in his knees reminded him of the jungles he had once crossed, He would subtly touch his right forearm, his fingers brushing over the faded, jagged scar. It was a silent conversation, a private reminder of battles fought and lessons learned, a silent testament to a life lived on the razor's edge. It was his mark, his history, his truth, a truth that now echoed through the hallowed halls of the Via Center, alive in the hearts of those he had helped to heal, a testament to the power of quiet compassion. Most people wouldn't have noticed the quiet observer in the support center, but a broken young soldier did. And now, so do we. So I'll ask you, have you ever met someone like Thomas Hayes? Someone who served, who never asked for praise, who never told their story, but whose wisdom changed lives? Anyway, write their name in the comments. Tell us how they lived. Say the quiet things they never would, because they deserve to be remembered. And if this story touched you, subscribe to Intelligent Stories. We're here to make sure that men like Thomas Hayes are never invisible again. Their wisdom was earned. Now it's time we speak for them. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, if you ever see an old man standing quietly in a store, a training ground, or a classroom, don't ask him what he's done. Just give him space, because he's already done so much for us all.